Since the Atlanta Committee for the Olympic Games has officially implied that all Americans around the country bow down in worship to the gods of Olympus, that's why we're introducing the 12 original Olympians to you now, so that you can determine whether these characters are worthy of your worship.
In ancient Greece, people began telling stories to explain the mysteries of life. Over time, the stories, or myths, grew rich and imaginative. The storytellers wove in their customs, beliefs, and theories about life, death, and the wonders of nature. The myths were about gods and goddesses, monsters, heroes, and mysterious beauties. People actually believed the myths were true, so they worshiped the gods, who they believed helped and guided them, and built temples to honor them. This developed over time into a religious culture. The gods and goddesses looked and acted human. They laughed, loved, quarreled, and fought, but they were immortal. They lived forever because a fluid called ichor, not blood, flowed through their veins. The mightiest of the gods and goddesses lived in a golden palace on Olympus. They feasted on ambrosia and nectar, the food and drink of the gods, and whenever they wished they could change shape and speed down to earth to mingle with the mortals. The Olympians earned their thrones on Olympus by fighting and winning a fierce battle against the Titans. The mythical Titans were ruled by their father Cronus, who had seized power from his parents, Uranus and Gaia, who were heaven and earth. Later, when Greece was conquered by Rome in 146 BC, Greek ideas about Olympus lived on, but the less imaginative Romans simply gave the Greek gods and goddesses Roman names and worshipped them as their own. The Greek father god Zeus was everywhere, changing form as easily as he changed the weather. He moved sun and moon and put constellations up. He protected everyone. In anger, he hurled thunderbolts. Zeus first married Metis, but he made Hera his queen. Zeus and Hera bickered constantly, for Zeus had many other women and had many children, and Hera was jealous of them all. Hera was beautiful and headstrong. Myth has it that her wedding with Zeus was so happy it lasted over 300 years. But things changed. She had little luck in managing Zeus, plotting to destroy him or to punish his women. Hera, nevertheless, was worshipped by women everywhere as the protector of marriage. Poseidon, god of the seas, was the second most powerful. He was nearly as promiscuous as Zeus. Always restless, he dried up lakes and rivers and sent tidal waves against those who made him angry. But when he rode over the seas in his golden chariot, the waters became calm. Cronus' third son, Hades, ruled over the world of the dead, the underworld. He wore a magic helmet that made him invisible, and no one who entered the underworld was ever allowed to leave. The one exception was Persephone, whom Hades abducted from Earth with Zeus' permission and made his queen. Persephone's mother, Demeter, searched endlessly for her. Eventually, Persephone won the right to come back to Earth, forced to spend only a couple of months each year in the underworld. Hades owned everything in the ground, every piece of gold, silver, and every diamond, ruby, emerald, or other gem. Hestia was goddess of the hearth. She never disagreed with anyone. She protected the home, but never married. Everyone prayed to her, and every fire in every hearth was Hestia's. Ancient Greeks carried live coals from an old city to a newly built city in her honor. Ares, however, was the opposite. He was a god even a mother would hate. He was a cruel, ill-tempered coward who loved killing. The bloodier the war, the better. He was a bad loser and stirred up trouble wherever he went. Hephaestus was the hard-working god of the forge, but homely. He was so weak, Queen Hera took one look and kicked him out of Olympus. He was rescued by the sea goddess Thetis and her sisters. 9 years later, Hera saw Thetis wearing a beautiful brooch and demanded to know who had made it. When Hera heard it was Hephaestus, she called him back and created an even bigger workshop for him. He was unhappily married to Aphrodite, whom he worshipped, but who often committed adultery. Athena was the goddess of wisdom, war, arts and crafts, and goddess of the city. Athens was named after her. She had a most unusual birth. Zeus had been warned that if one of his wives, Metis, bore a son, that son would depose Zeus, just as Zeus and Cronus had deposed of their own fathers. Zeus took no chances. One day he lured Metis close with sweet words and swallowed her. But soon after, Zeus was hit by an Excedrin headache and screamed for help. Hephaestus grabbed an axe and split open Zeus's head. Out sprang Athena, armed for action. Immediately, she became her father's favorite advisor. Though Athena was a warrior, she hated war and sought peaceful ways to settle fights. Apollo was god of light and truth, of healing, archery, and music. He was perhaps the most loved of all. He taught people how to comfort the sick. He shot arrows into every monster that threatened anyone he loved. Many believe that Apollo spoke to humans through the voice of a Pythia, or priestess, who was called the Delphic Oracle. Thousands of visitors from across the Mediterranean world sought after her ecstatic utterances, which were interpreted by another official at the temple. Artemis was the goddess of the hunt, of the moon and children. She was the twin sister of Apollo. Armed with a silver bow and arrows, she chased stags and other animals. Yet, as goddess of the hunt, she protected young animals and children. Like Apollo, Artemis was connected to the moon as a symbol of purity. And like Athena and Hestia, Artemis never married. Aphrodite was the goddess of love and beauty. She supposedly rose out of the sea on a cushion of foam. She was so beautiful. Love bloomed around her, and sometimes jealousy. Despite Hera's protests, Zeus gave Aphrodite a throne on Olympus and made her Hephaestus' wife. Aphrodite wore a magic girdle that made love flare up. Every goddess tried to beg, borrow, or steal that belt, but none succeeded. Aphrodite's love spell was so great that even wild lions and tigers were tamed in her presence. Hermes was the god of motion, sleep, and dreams, of commerce and travelers. He was Zeus's messenger and wore a winged golden helmet, sometimes silver, to protect himself from bad weather. His golden winged sandals gave him speed, and he carried a magic golden wand, a gift from Apollo, to guide him. He delivered the dead to Hades' underworld. Hermes invented fire, written music, boxing, and the lyre, which was his gift to Apollo.
Those were the gods and goddesses of Olympus. There, the Greeks erected idols and built magnificent temples in a grove dedicated to their supreme god, Zeus. Inside the greatest shrine was a 42-foot-tall ivory and gold statue of Zeus, created by the sculptor Phidias. It was considered one of the 7 wonders of the world. Today, only a few columns and slabs remain of the original site, but a nearby museum includes a gallery of statues that portray statesmen, generals, and gods, forever frozen in marble, forever in tribute to the gods of Olympus. The winners of the Olympic competition were crowned with wreaths from a sacred olive tree that grew behind the temple of Zeus. In 490 BC, when the Greeks defeated the invading Persians at the Battle of Marathon, a runner named Phidippides ran the 26 miles from Marathon to Athens with news of the victory. When he reached Athens, he proclaimed, "Rejoice, we conquer!" Then he dropped dead. So, to honor Phidippides, the marathon race was made an Olympic event in 1896. We all know how pervasive a force music is to mold emotions and influence thinking. And that was the intent of the organizers of these games. They commissioned no one less than John Williams, the legendary composer who scored the Indiana Jones films, the one who inspired the idea of a unified global humanity in the Superman series, and amplified the notion that there was indeed a likelihood of a close encounter of the third kind. it was no one less than William.